The ICE raids versus the LA riots situation just got crazier, with rumors of ICE raids happening at schools, funerals, and even birthday parties. Mostly peaceful protests have kicked off in LA, with rioters destroying vehicles, blocking traffic, setting police cars on fire, and looting at a local Apple store in downtown Los Angeles. But now the situation has escalated beyond local authorities. Trump sent in National Guard and 700 Marines from Camp Pendleton to take control of the situation. From the complexities of ripping apart illegal immigrant families to raids in controversial spaces to Trump flexing his powers, in this video, we're going to look into how we got here, what the scriptural response can be in situations like this, and some of the common responses and objections to the entire situation. But before we get into that, guys, my name is Ruslan. This channel exists to encourage, empower, and inspire you to live a life that blesses God. So if you're new here, or if you're not new here, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. There's a huge percentage of the people that watch this channel regularly, unfortunately, are not subscribed. All right, let's jump into the video. What happened? Basically, it's being alleged that there were some ICE raids in parts of LA that are, how do I say this, very close to normal activities. And I think when like graduations, birthday parties, stuff like that, churches, right? And what seems to have happened was that was overturned when Trump became elected, meaning that it wasn't just about going after criminals, it was about going after people that have been here for a while. Yeah. Right? Helmeted police in riot gear turned out Friday evening in a tense conversation with protesters in downtown Los Angeles after a federal day of immigration raid. So remember, this is a state situation. These are federal agencies going in, and there's immigrations happening in which dozens of people across the city were reported to be taken into custody. Live Reuters video showed Los Angeles Police Department officers lined up to a downtown street wielding batons and what appeared to be tear gas, rifles facing off with demonstrators after authorities had ordered crowds of protesters disperse. This entire situation has now led a dispute between the governor of California and Trump, whether or not they're going to deploy National Guard troops in LA. So California Governor Newsom and President Trump are in dispute over the president's order to deploy the National Guard to Los Angeles to deal with unrest following immigration and customs enforcement raids on Friday. Trump deployed 2,000 California National Guard soldiers early on Sunday. He was even talking about deploying Marines from Camp Pendleton after ICE agents were reportedly attacked while conducting deportation raids. Newsom has demanded that Trump rescind the decision and has accused him of acting like a dictator. He told MSNBC Left Bias in an interview on Sunday that California was planning to sue the administration on Monday afternoon. Here's the crazy thing about all of this, is that we didn't get here overnight. This has been long in the making. And what I think has happened is that this has been an overcorrection to an overcorrection. Repeated overcorrections. Now, we'll get into like the scriptural tie-in a second, but I want to make sure that I give you guys some of the context of what and how we got here. Marines are in LA. Is this real?
Yeah, this is real.
Yeah, I mean, this sort of footage. Here's the thing. This is the thing that I think both sides don't understand. From my understanding, this is happening in downtown Los Angeles.
Yeah.
This is not happening all over LA. People are texting me, I hope you guys are okay. This is happening right on the 101 freeway right in downtown LA. That doesn't make it right, but these are the actual things that can get martial law escalated in LA. So like the people who are trying to protest are playing themselves by thinking this is going to move the needle. If anything, this is going to escalate things.
Yeah, and they're going to be like, why are there Marines here?
Right.
What did we do? There's like 15 cop cars that have been dropped rocks on.
Right.
Insane.
And there's a degree of lawlessness that will only escalate as the other side escalates. Trump is going to escalate because this is what he ran on. What is that? What are we looking at?
These are the Marines pulling up.
Yeah. So these Marines are also, now their safety is potentially in jeopardy. Right? And then you have people, the tricky part is like the mostly peaceful protests. Like, I don't know how mostly peaceful these are.
If a protest turns not peaceful, it's hard to say that they're mostly peaceful.
Yeah, it's not peaceful anymore. So now here is the context of how we got here, and then we're going to kind of go into the scriptural. This is a dope channel, Elephants in Room. You guys should go watch the entire version of this. This says, why did the elites open America's borders?
Democrats believed those optics alone would help crush Trump politically. They looked at polls, often influenced by how the questions were framed and often commissioned by advocacy groups, and those polls reinforced that same assumption, making Democrats confident that Trump's stance was politically. But while a lot of Americans didn't like the concept of child separations, they still supported stricter enforcement overall. The numbers were still driven more by Republicans, but by the end of Trump's presidency, 80% of Democrats wanted more, not fewer, resources to go police the border. But by that time...
So what happened was that generally, both sides have been hard on this issue.
Yeah.
Barack Obama, he was coined as the deporter-in-chief.
Whoa.
Right?
Barack Obama?
Uh-huh.
Yo.
Some people were just turned away at the border.
Deporter-in-chief is amazing.
Yeah. While creating the DACA Act, which is like if you've been here since a kid, you can stay.
Okay.
Right?
I see.
The Trump kind of spoke about this flippantly. And then the Democrats also wanted to counter what Trump did. And that's exactly what happened.
The major Democratic candidates were going all in on the other way. None supported building a physical barrier. And instead, their policies were more about pathways for citizenship, or decriminalizing border crossing, softening the force at the border, and offering illegal immigrants more services, not fewer. All of these beliefs, and some miscalculations by the Democratic leadership, set the stage for the Biden administration. And it might not have hurt them as badly as it did, except for one man whose name isn't Donald Trump. I'll explain that in just a second.
When immigrants come, they're more likely to also be Democrat voters.
Gotcha.
So all this leads us to the Biden administration, where the political miscalculations finally collided with reality. On his very first day in office, President Biden didn't waste any time. He was determined to prove that he wasn't Trump, and immigration was his top target. With a few executive action signatures, he stopped construction on Trump's border wall. He tried to freeze deportations for 100 days, and he scrapped the Remain in Mexico policy. That, and more, sent a crystal clear message to anyone thinking about heading north. America was open again.
So that happened on day one
of
the Biden administration.
That's crazy.
So you had Obama, who reportedly deported 3 million. You have Trump come down harder on immigration. Biden comes in and goes the opposite extreme.
Yep.
So now there was a policy in place, remain in Mexico. If you come to the border, you get caught, they send you to Mexico. You remain in Mexico until you get a date to claim your asylum status.
Yes.
That law was lifted day one. The wall stopped being built day one on Biden's administration. So he went the opposite extreme. So what we're seeing with Trump is now he's going the further extreme. So it's like one extreme to another extreme to another extreme.
Wow, yeah.
And so this is how where we are now, which is you have, folks have been here for a while, folks that aren't criminals that are being deported.
And they're all criminals because they're here illegally.
Right. And the thing is, the people that swayed this boat, the people in the middle that Trump lost last time, though, he won this time. I don't think they signed up for randos who are just trying to keep their head down getting deported. I don't think they signed up for people showing up near elementary schools, half a mile away from elementary schools, pulling up to Home Depots off of Wilshire and skipping and scooping people up. I don't think that's what it is. I think most people are probably like, yeah, we got to do better with our borders. We got to lock down the borders, get the criminals out, picking up the abuela who's just trying to, keep her head down and make an honest living.
Yeah.
I don't think most people signed up for that.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing that in LA, who has a huge immigrant population.
I have a question. Do you think because it's so close, literally to home, but it's actually happening in the U.S. now, that it feels more intense? But if this were happening in the UK and they were picking up a lot of the Muslim community that's been there for 25 plus years and kicking them out, and they had a right-leaning whatever person that from the American perspective would be like, yeah, that's how you do it. That's how you protect your country. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know.
Is it a little close to home and so it feels even more hostile? Because we all have lived around little abuelas making amazing food at the local taco shop or right outside their house. And that feels way more like, oh, yeah, they didn't really bother us type of thing. And you can see the value that they have in society. And so it feels closer to home, but in practice, if this was happening on the other side of the ocean, it might be yeah.
I don't know. I think if someone's been somewhere and this is all they know.
Yeah.
I don't know if scooping them up and tearing them apart from their family is the move.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think multiple things can be true.
Yeah.
Create a pathway for people to legally come here. That's true. Lock down the borders.
Yeah.
That's true. leave the abuelas alone. Leave the folks alone that have been here since they were babies. Leave the folks alone that have been here for decades.
Yeah.
Leave those folks alone. They don't got, if they don't got criminal records, leave those. I think, believe it or not, I think that's where most people are at.
Yeah.
Most people on either side of this are like, leave these folks alone.
Immediately, the numbers exploded. In Biden's first year alone, border crossings soared to 2.4 million encounters, the highest ever recorded. Biden's defenders tried to cite external factors like poverty or violence or climate change, anything. But those problems existed long before he took office. The only real change was the country's immigration policies. Now look, I need to make a quick side point about immigration numbers though, because they're super convoluted. I mean, no one knows how many illegal immigrants are in the country. Some of that's because we don't know how many have sneaked in, but a lot of it is because of intentional government actions that intentionally make those numbers confusing. Okay, so take changing the Remain in Mexico policy I mentioned. What that means is that someone who may have had an almost non-existent chance of getting asylum could come into the country and be allowed to stay here while he was waiting for his court hearing. Courts that were backlogged by about 4 years. So there were about 1 million people.
They wouldn't show up for these court hearings.
But and their court hearing was 4 years out.
Yeah.
So it was already super.
So now you got potentially tens of millions of people that came over during the 4 years of Biden.
What?
Who weren't considered illegal under the Biden administration because technically they were waiting for their hearing, even though many of them would never show up. But now, for instance, that status under Trump has been revoked, so now they're illegal again. So look, if you want to play games with immigration numbers, they're so squishy it's easy to do. And both sides do it all the time. And that allowed, for instance, years the Biden administration to just pretend it wasn't happening or it was exaggerated.
We have a secure border in that is a priority for any nation, including ours and our administration.
And for the first couple of years, most of the media played along. I mean, if you watched Fox News or followed conservative media, it looked like an ongoing invasion. But if you watched other outlets, you might have hardly even seen it at all.
So this all went left, though, at one point in time.
Okay.
And he's about to get to it. When did this all change? When did most people say, we got to be harder on the border? Something happened.
Voting?
Nope. Before voting.
Is it before the voting?
Before voting. Keep going.
Conservative media watchdog group looked at the coverage in August 2021 when border encounters had shot up to 200,000 in just a month. The national news networks that month, ABC, CBS, and NBC, they covered it combined for a total of 6.5 minutes over the entire month. But one man eventually made the entire media pay attention. That was Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas. In April of 2022, he started busing migrants from Texas to cities throughout the United States. He started with Washington, D.C., and then expanded to sanctuary cities around the country.
So he started dropping off illegals in left-leaning cities that
have sanctuary cities and said, hey, because, most folks who come over are going to be in,
border cities.
California, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico.
Yeah.
He started taking folks from Texas and shipping them to these, sanctuary cities.
Y'all want to be a sanctuary?
Up north in parts of Martha's Vineyard and
you want to declare
Vermont.
yourself a sanctuary city?
Yeah, these liberal cities.
Now you're going to have to put your works into action.
Yeah.
Mainly New York, Chicago, Denver, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles.
Oh my
Abbott's
God.
actions may have been political theater, but it undeniably changed the conversation. In 2 years, he had sent out over 100,000 migrants to these cities, and it forced these mayors to grapple with the same chaos that Texas border towns had dealt with for decades. Let's look at one example. Eric Adams, New York City's mayor. He quickly changed his tune from being a strong supporter of sanctuary cities to saying the surge would destroy New York City as immigrants from Texas and then other areas started flocking there. They estimated 175,000 immigrants came to New York with a 3-year budget cost of $12 billion.
So Greg Abbott, well played, said, yeah, I'm sending them to your house.
I want to hurt your pockets. This is your issue now.
This is your issue now. You want these sanctuary cities? Cool. We're going to send them to your sanctuary cities. And this is when he's going to make this point right here. Once you start seeing the economic impact
Oh, you
of
realize this?
billions of people coming over. I mean,
not
millions of
sustainable.
people coming over, spending billions of dollars, putting these folks up in hotels. You start seeing, oh, this isn't just isolated. These aren't just, right? This has an economic impact on us.
Wow.
Before too long, this wasn't a fake Fox News problem anymore. Across the country, you had urban Democratic voters experiencing the masses of immigrants firsthand, displacing job markets, apartments, and overcrowding schools. And if you're struggling to make ends meet and then see your city spending tons of money on people who came uninvited from other countries, That's the kind of thing that changes minds and changes votes.
We have homeless, we have veterans that we're concerned about. Our vets and our homeless in America need to be prioritized.
By the time the Biden administration realized the size of the political backlash, it was too late. By mid-2023, 2/3 of Americans disapproved of his immigration policies.
Oh my goodness.
Immigration had shot up as a top voter concern, sometimes even overshadowing inflation. By June 2024, polls showed Americans trusted Trump over Biden on immigration by a 13-point margin, 44% to 31%. Overall, the fundamental mistakes the administration made: listening to pro-immigration groups and their polls more than they should have, and just paying attention to the press that agreed with them. And that's a lesson we should all pay attention to, because the press is just partisan these days.
So you got folks who are now dealing with folks in their own cities. You're seeing your schools more crowded.
Yeah.
You're seeing job markets disrupted. You're seeing the actual impacts of immigration, and it is no longer just something that is far, far away. It's in your backyard now. What you're seeing in LA is the overflow of that. What you're seeing with this hard on immigration, hard on illegals, is the overflow of these cities that are now having to deal with it. And that's why most people wanted more border security, while at the same time thinking, well, they're not really going to go and just get every person that's not here without paperwork, right? We're not just going to get everybody to do this. Let's look at a couple different passages. So when it comes to this conversation, there's kind of two different ways people go, right? One way is they quote the Levitical law. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. And so there's multiple verses like this in the Old Testament about the foreigner among you. There's also verses like the verse in Jeremiah. If you really change your ways, this is God speaking to the children of Israel in exile in Babylon. He says, if you really change your ways and your actions and deal with each other justly, if you do not oppress the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow, and do not shed innocent blood in this place, and if you do not follow the gods to your harm, then I will let you live in this place, in the land I gave your ancestors forever and ever. But look, you are trusting in deceptive words that are worthless. So there are verses about loving and treating the foreigner as yourself, about not oppressing the foreigner, which is categorized as the same with regards to the widow and the fatherless. So that's a thing that I'm seeing on social media, is a lot of folks are like, hey, look at these verses here. It says not to oppress the foreigner. It says to love them as you love yourself. Here's the tension there. The tension there is, if we're going to quote Leviticus passages about a theocracy set up with judges, are we going to then apply all of Leviticus and all of the law to our context here and now? So that's an important distinction. So then, are we going to apply the passages about fornication? Are we going to apply the passages about homosexuality? Are we going to apply the food passages and what we're allowed to eat or not eat? See, the issue is that Leviticus is written to a specific people under specific governance. That governance was a theocracy where judges would hear from God and they would communicate Moses, so on and so forth, right? So you can't just pick the verses that you want from Leviticus and say, well, therefore, that's how we have to do and treat people here today that came here and broke the law. That's the issue with going to those verses, is those verses are in a broader context. And yes, we can pull out the principles from them. Now, here's the other side of how we can look at this issue, the Romans 13 issue, right? Romans 13, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted. This is actually written to Christians in Rome while they are under Roman occupation, okay? This is not a friendly government towards Christians, and yet Paul is still writing this, right? Those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from the fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servant, agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also a matter of conscience. So here's the flip side to this. If we're trying to take a biblical inventory of what is the role of government in Scripture, there's not a whole lot there. outside of don't oppress the foreigner, don't oppress the vulnerable, don't oppress the marginalized. And the government is there to bear the sword and bring wrath and punishment to the wrongdoer, to keep law and order. So the government's there not to preferably don't oppress people, at the same time, bring law and order. That is the role of a biblical framework for government. Now, people will say, well, okay, well, why can't we be nicer to people who are here illegally? Here lies the tension. The people who are here right now are often taking resources and benefiting from a society that is allowing them to stay and rewarding them for coming somewhere illegally. So from a biblical paradigm, I think it's very difficult to stamp that as something that God would be for. Now, people who came here seeking asylum should go through the proper process of seeking asylum. I'm saying this as someone that came and got asylum status as a refugee. So we can't pick and choose what Levitical passages we're going to take. We could try to extract the principle that we should have empathy and compassion and all the things. At the same time, there should be order. There should be a hierarchy of priorities. So you can't just say we're going to take these verses about foreigners, but who's paying for this? You understand? We're paying for this. So when you see people who are here, and this is how the whole thing got swapped. This is how the whole thing got swapped. People, when they started seeing this in major cities, when they started seeing the hotels filled up and people who came here illegally being placed in hotels and they're struggling, they're living paycheck to paycheck. They're seeing the government take care of people that aren't citizens while there are actual people who serve this country, people in the military, people who are veterans who serve this country, and they're getting licked over. This is when the whole thing flipped, because there was an overcorrection to an overcorrection to an overcorrection. And so you now have the reality that these people are here legally. Some have been here for decades. Again, you may say I'm inconsistent. You may say it's inconsistent of me to say, I think people who have been here for decades. I think people who have been here since they were kids. I think you let those people stay. I think you get the criminals out. And the folks who are breaking laws and have violent records and have gang affiliations, I think you get those people out. But the people that have been here, I think you let them stay. I think that's a reasonable conclusion to come to. The escalation of force, if you're going in and you're taking people that have been here for a while, they're trying to do their best, I think you're going to create more of a recipe for chaos. That doesn't mean that the rioting and the stuff that's happening in LA is okay. It's not. It's dumb. It's not going to it's going to just escalate. It's going to get more Marines there. It's going to get more National Guard sent there. And so now it's like both sides are playing chicken, and there's a lot of goofy stuff that's being presupposed. Some of you guys are claiming to be Christians, ignoring that the scriptures presuppose nation states. Some of you guys are claiming to be Christians, ignoring that the scriptures presuppose nation states. There are boundaries. There were walls in the scriptures. That's goofy. There is a clear distinction that there's people within a nation and there's people outside of the nation. And yes, when people come into your nation, you should treat them fairly and justly. The issue is the people who are coming in should go through some sort of process, and the people who are staying should be willing to assimilate to what is happening within said nation. They should be willing to learn the language, learn the customs, and become a part of whatever nation state that they're in. That is what happened in the scriptures. The foreigners that came in become a part of the culture. They would oftentimes also get circumcised. They would also learn and become a part of the Hebrew culture that they were grafted into, right? And so this idea that America is also responsible for all the poverty worldwide is wild. It's wild. Those nations have their own degrees of corruption. Those nations have their own issues. Those nations have their own things that need to be sorted out. And to just assume that America can take everybody in and we have infinite supplies of money and we have infinite supplies of resources, someone is paying that. Your taxes are paying that. Your future kids are going to be paying for that. Your grandkids are paying for that. So when you're seeing these things consistently exploding, the violence of the protests is only going to make them worse. That's a fact. The people who are already against this are going to want more force. That's a fact. and you're going to see it escalate. The people who came here that need asylum should go through some sort of process. There is not infinite money, and we are not a globalist society. Thank God. We haven't entered globalism yet. Thank God. So if your paradigm is I'm a Christian and I want the Levitical laws, but you don't want the Levitical laws on homosexuality, you don't want the Levitical laws on food, you don't want the Levitical laws. You just want to pick and choose. That's incoherent. That's inconsistent. So, as a Christian, if you're going to say you follow the scriptures as your litmus test and your North Star, the role of government is to keep law and order. That's the primary role of government. The second role is to not oppress those who are marginalized. Folks that are coming here illegally, I think it's a reach to say they're all marginalized. Now, again, doesn't mean I think we should be going in and taking people at graduations, if that's happening. I don't think we should be going into churches. I don't think we should be going into schools. That's foul. So here's the tricky part, is that we're simple-minded people. We're simple-minded creatures, and we just want a yes or a no. Abolish ICE, or ICE is the greatest thing ever. It's like, sometimes it's more complicated than that. Sometimes multiple things could be true at the same time. Hey, you probably shouldn't be going into churches. You probably shouldn't be going into graduations. You probably, if this is what's happening, you shouldn't be doing these things at birthday parties. You shouldn't be doing those things. At the same time, you got to keep order. You got to keep laws. You got to be consistent. It's not this country's job to take care of everyone else. It's not this country's job to welcome in everybody. I understand we're a nation of immigrants, but we've also had times in history where we've not allowed as much immigration, or we've shut down immigration. That's happened. And so there's a tension here that we get to wrestle with. Now, here's the deal. If you want to welcome in the foreigner, then you should do that as a citizen, as an individual citizen. You should do that. You should build your life in a way where you can take in the foreigner. But to demand that the government and to demand that other taxpayers do that on behalf of nations and people groups that we're not responsible for, I think is a bit inconsistent. I think that doesn't make any sense. Because here's the thing. Here's another truth. And this is going to be uncomfortable. You cannot be generous with other people's stuff. When you're opening up the borders and you're letting anybody in, you cannot be generous with other people's stuff. You can't say, I'm going to take my neighbor's stuff and give it to this other neighbor over here. Everyone has to collectively agree that we are doing X, Y, and Z with taxes, for example. And so saying we're going to let these people in and we're going to let the government pay for this and pay for their health insurance and pay for their housing and pay for this, you're literally taking stuff from other people and saying, I'm okay with the government taking stuff because the money comes from somewhere. Someone's paying for it, probably our grandkids, as this deficit runs up. And so these are disjointed, incoherent ideas. And some of them are, unfortunately, starting with presuppositions. They're starting with false presuppositions. Here's a false presuppositions. Borders are bad. No, they're not. Not if you're a Christian. There's borders in the scriptures. There's walls being built in the scriptures. Borders are good. There's nations in the scriptures. There's peoples in the scriptures. So that's a false presupposition. False presupposition 2. We are to welcome in everybody, no matter the expense. That's false. That is not true. You can't do that. We can be generous with other people's stuff. Can't do that. That's not scripture. If you want to welcome in people from other nations, you can do that as an individual. You can do that as a church. You can do that as a ministry. The Catholic Church does a lot of this sort of stuff. And so there's also everyone is my neighbor, so everyone is to be treated equally. No, your neighbor is first and foremost your family, your immediate family, then your extended family, then your church family, then your community, then the nations. So here's a scripture of the hierarchy. Here's a scripture of the hierarchy. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially those who belong to the family of believers. You notice there's a hierarchy here. You are to good. You are to do, as you have opportunity, you are to do good to all people. However, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. So not everyone gets the same treatment. My wife and kids get different access and resource for me than my next door neighbors. My next door neighbors get different access and resource for me than my local community and my church community. My church community gets different access and resource for me than people in other countries. Does this make sense? So there's a hierarchy in needs and who and how, because there's only so many resources. So that's the issue, is you're taking scriptures and you're trying to contort and twist scriptures, but you would never say, oh yeah, let's ban homosexuality. You would never say, oh yeah, we're going to ban fornication. We're going to ban adultery. Because if you're going to take the Levitical law, then go ahead and stone that person that just committed adultery. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. And so there's a hierarchy that we have as followers of Jesus to first and foremost take care of our own household. 1 Timothy 5, he who does not provide for the needs of his family, specifically his immediate family, is worse than a non-believer and is denied the faith. Hierarchy, right? So take care of the needs of your own family, your immediate family, and then your neighbors, and then your community, and then the nations. We want to invert that. Why? And this is the sick part about this. And I don't want to appeal to anybody's motives who may flow in this paradigm. I think the sick part about this is we inverse this and we say, oh yeah, take care of the nations, take care of these people over here, take care of those people over there. What about Palestine? What about this? And it's easy to be a social media activist about what's happening over there because you don't have to deal with what's happening around here. You can have a bleeding heart for the people you don't actually have to interact with. And so you throw a hashtag up or you put something on your story versus saying, hey, what about taking care of my household and being a grown-up and being a responsible adult that takes care of my household, my extended family, and then people in my local community, my church community? It's easier to just say, yeah, let everybody in, let everybody in. Well, you don't have to deal with everybody. You don't have to govern everybody. And so we've inverted it. We're more concerned about people coming in over there from over there than we are with caring for our own. Helen brings up a good point. She says, but Ruslan, isn't the U.S. also responsible in destabilizing a lot of the same countries that we are saying let the government take care of them? Sincerely asking. Great question. Is the U.S. responsible in destabilizing a lot of the same countries? I think the U.S. has had alliances in parts of South America who, in a desire to put the people we want in power, has caused more destabilization to parts of the country, to parts of different countries. Perhaps. That, in my opinion, does not trump or enable or allow everyone to come here because 50 years ago there was a bad policy, 60 years ago there was a bad policy where we wanted this person in because they were more sympathetic to U.S. causes, and therefore now 50, 60 years later, our kids and grandkids have to pay for the consequences of whatever policy destabilized that region. I don't think those things are the same. I think nations are very complicated in how they ran. And I think oftentimes they do what's in the interest of whatever's happening right then and there. And sometimes it's with malicious intent, and sometimes it's with good intent. And I don't know. But to assume that the U.S. is this big bad bully and is responsible for all the world's problems, therefore, we have to welcome in everybody from every nation and have open borders. I don't think that's what you're arguing, Helen. But that is some of the arguing on the side of these people are victims and therefore we have to welcome everybody. I don't think that's what the scriptural position would be. I think there is a time and a place to look at asylum and welcome in people that want to come here, that have cases. I think Trump is going too hard against that, if I'm being honest with you. I think he's going way too hard against that. I think the overuse of force is going to create more trouble. And is actually going to get everybody not what they want. You're going to see more LA hurt and more LA businesses hurt and more people who are Hispanic and from poorer areas pay the consequences for the violence. And you're going to see more martial law and more tension created. And I don't think anybody really wants that. But yeah, so is it possible that the government has destabilized certain regions? Yeah, it's possible. It's probably likely in South America. Does that mean that we are now responsible for every other nation and welcoming in every single person from all over? I don't think so. And based on that, there's another common response to this entire thing, the rebuttal to this entire thing, which is, well, wasn't America built on stolen land? Now, the issue with that is if you go back within other tribes and people who were here on this land, natives, they often also killed each other over land. And if you look at Spain, that came over and took the land, and then Mexico sold a big chunk of land to the United States, specifically the West Coast, is that also stolen land? The issue with stolen land is how far do you want to run that clock back, right? Or is it only bad when America did it? Because stolen land, people rising up against other people, violence, war, tragedy, this has been happening for all of civilization. So I think saying, well, at this point, everything that happened beyond this point, America's responsible for, and because this was quote unquote stolen land, then we should remove any responsibility from the folks that want to come here and just let them come here as often as they want. Again, globalism is not a biblical concept, right? There is an order, there is nations, there is borders. So what is the solution to situations like this? Well, honestly, I think the best solution is to contribute to organizations that are providing relief to folks that are seeking asylum. There's a few organizations that I've personally partnered with. One of them is World Relief. The other one is the I.C.E, which is the organization that helped me and my family actually come here as refugees from Azerbaijan in the early 90s. And I'm still a monthly partner with them, even though I don't agree with all their views, especially around this time of the year, if you know what I'm talking about. But generally speaking, I think if you feel passionate about this cause, a great way to help with this cause is to contribute to organizations that are helping people come over to the United States who are seeking asylum. I think another great way to contribute to what is happening is by first making sure our house is in order, is by making sure that we are being good providers, protectors, and priests of the things that we have responsibility over. And understand that according to 1 Timothy 5, we are first called to take care of our household. We are first called to take care of the church and then go beyond that. And so if we focus on the responsibilities we have, and then we perhaps have some sort of opportunity to help someone come over here legally and go through the process of seeking asylum or seeking legal status, we can be a part of that. And I think the last way we can help with this is when and if the opportunities present themselves of someone that is going through it that perhaps is undocumented, maybe outside of the macro policy and how all that should be dealt with, which can be complicated, we extend mercy and compassion to the person that is right in front of us. I've had the opportunity to help folks, whether I've hired movers and find out some of them are undocumented. A handful of them were actually from the same country I was from. Uber drivers, folks like that. You get an Uber driver, they pull up and it's not the same Uber driver that is in the picture. And yeah, I don't agree with that, but in the moment, I want to hear their story and I want to help however I can. And oftentimes that may mean like praying for them. And when you have the opportunity, as I do, but perhaps contributing financially to them to maybe help them find the legal resources to help them get status to be here legally. And so I think this entire situation, especially the way it plays out in the news and social media, is an oversimplification of how we got here. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't because one person wants to just kick everybody out, make this only a specific kind of nation for a specific kind of people. I think this has been a very ongoing process that's been a death by 1,000 cuts, and now we're here. And now seeing families separated is tragic. And again, I don't think that should happen. At the same time, I don't think open borders is the solution either. I don't think that people coming here with no desire to assimilate, learn the language is helpful to what America is. I think at some point, America will run out of resources to care for everybody. Remember, resources are finite, believe it or not. You can't just infinitely print money to create as many services as you can. And the nation also has a responsibility to the folks that have served the nation, specifically folks like veterans. To say that we could do it all, I think is a bit short-sighted in the way that our economic system is set up. And eventually, someone's going to have to pay for that. If not us, then our kids. If not our kids, then our grandkids. And I don't think that's fair to the future generations to just infinitely print money to deal with things that perhaps we're not equipped to financially support. So ultimately, a lot of this stuff we can't control. We can control what's in front of us. And the best way to control what's in front of you is by discovering what your purpose is here and now. So we put together an entire playlist to help you discover your purpose and some of the massive distractions coming your way. So if you want to check that out, click here. If you want to get that free 60-day Logos Bible software trial, you can click over here. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.